Chris, good.
Okay, so I puzzled a little bit. I thought one of the last things we talked about was this idea of legacy, and it has really resonated with me. I think it was triggered by saying, well, it was a good thing we're going together because I wasn't sure how many more times I was going to go. And then I started to think about, well, this is the way, the kind of influence you have continues if you've had some kind of sustained influence. So that's kind of a neat thought.
Yeah.
So, Cathy, did you want to add anything to start with today?
Our work to rule is done, which is why I was late getting here. But because our meeting went longer than it would have, so that's very exciting. I wanted to say too that I wanted to make it clear when we were talking yesterday that what I meant by my planning time for teaching goes down. I just meant in the hectic writing phase. I don't mean in general, okay? So
no, we understood.
Good. And I'm just gathering my thoughts, so you go ahead.
Liz?
Well, I was looking around on the paper last night and made a few minor corrections and highlighted a couple of words that I just hoped we could talk about as we go through the paper. I think it was in perspectives. Yeah. On page 3, it is on my copy right now. That page number changes as we make changes to the paper, but we can talk about when we go through it. As far as your comment about legacy, I think that's important, Jackie. And I heard somebody refer to it once as institutional memory. And that, in all kinds of workplace environments, that's in jeopardy because of changes in the baby boom and all those things. So that is really important. And then I was reading somewhere else, and I'm trying to remember where I've been trying to access the recesses of my mind today to find out, but I was reading somewhere about how we need the combination of the diversity of a group, but specifically like elders and young people, and to come up with the way to move forward so that we have new ideas, but plus that wisdom of lived experiences combined. So I think if we can combine all that, we might be able to tap into something that is scholarly significant. And then I think we need to sing it.
Well, the reason it resonated with me was because last night I went to, because of an invitation, to a demonstration of the Roots of Empathy program, which is the program where we bring babies into classrooms to teach kids empathy. And I introduced that program in the board. And Ruth Mills is a principal in our system, whom I've known for many, many years. And she picked up that and just ran with it. And she teaches 5 classes, Roots of Empathy, and she's a principal of a large school. And I mean, that's a huge commitment on her part. And so, and she attributed me, my influence for her doing that. And in addition, she did research on the program in her master's degree that she studied with me. So, that felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I'm going to work on the paper, as I said, on Friday morning, before our session. And I'm just wondering, Jackie, with Ruth Mills, who I remember well, is there anything that we could actually refer to? Because that's very important, I think, that notion of the roots of empathy.
Well, it's interesting to, when you leave a system and you wonder how much of what you've tried to do has any life after you're gone. And certainly that's one example that is flourishing, actually, in our whole school board because of that introduction that I made. And other programs, too, that I know, but that one in particular. And every school has a number of suspensions. Children suspended from school for misbehavior. And last year, when Ruth first went to that school, she had 150. And last year, she had 2.
God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Staggering.
Now, it isn't only the Roots of Empathy program.
Yeah.
And she, I said that to her last night. I said, it's your force of will, Ruth. The constant reminders to the children, the interventions early, other programs like Tribes, talking about kids about caring and values. I mean, she lives it. She's an inspiration. But, I just, it makes you feel like you've made a contribution.
Yeah.
When it lives after you.
Yeah.
I think it was key. Those things are all, I think, instrumental in contributing to that, Jackie. But it was key that you said she lives it, right? So it has stayed with her. And I was just thinking when you were talking about flourishing, and so if people continue to flourish when you leave, that's legacy. But that's, I guess, if we want to term it and frame it in terms of what we're talking about, it's sustainable influence, right? That's what legacy is. It's sustainable influence.
Well, and that was the other example with Lori. I mean, I started with her as, a rookie teacher and worked with her over many, many years. And now she's a system leader in curriculum in the system and refers back to my influence, And so that's, that was the other one. As soon as I heard that, I thought, oh.
That's great.
So, Liz, you said something on page 3 you wanted us to look at. What was that? Under perspectives.
Yeah, so I've highlighted it in orange.
Okay, I see it, yeah.
So, the first word, in our capacities to build a cultural point beyond our expectations. I was thinking about that word, and I thought, is it, and I don't want to be splitting hairs or anything, but I think hopes works better for me there as opposed to expectations.
Sure.
Just because I think a big part of what we do is not have expectations. Expectations like they're traditionally thought of, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a hope for an improved future, isn't it?
Yeah. And then trying to improve student learning. So yeah, exactly, Jackie. It's more than student learning that we're trying to improve here, right? Yep. It's more like student living. And so I make learning more meaningful with a question mark. I think we need something else there because we're not just interested in the sort of ministry stuff of expectations and results, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think we preclude that. So for me, I think that is one of the benefits that, people don't see immediately. I mean, if you spend time with kids up front building relationships, then they learn more quickly. But people think that, there's no time to do that. You got to get right in and, do the curriculum. Whereas if you could just take a step back and say, okay, if we build this culture of inquiry, this mutual respect, this feeling of safety, then you can actually move them ahead much more quickly.
Yes.
So can we say that then? Something that captures that and that says trying to build relationships that will improve student learning or something like that.
Yeah. I think that when I say improve student learning, that's kind of what's in my brain. So I need to clarify it more because I always want to go back to why is it important to do a better job? Why is it important to be a better person with them? Because I want them to be more successful. to be my language is self-evaluating adults. People that really know themselves and can stand up for themselves and can do productive work.
Yeah, to be more successful, once they have generated and understood a definition of success for themselves.
Sure.
Right?
Yep. So, anyway, that's why I use that language, and that goes way back to the beginning of my doctoral work, because I always was looking for how is what I'm doing making a difference in the classroom, even though I'm not directly in that classroom.
Yeah.
And it's always through others. That's how you do it.
Yeah, so it's making a difference, which often results in improving student learning.
Do you have anything, and this is for Liz or Cathy, I think, where if we were to ask for data or evidence that shows improvement in student learning, what would you direct us to? Could you?
I think in my section, I kind of hinted at that, and I've reworked it a little bit, where I'm talking about if we're doing a quantitative action. Sorry, the dogs are up here with me. If I were doing a quantitative analysis, I would be, in a conversation I had with my superintendent, she said, okay, so if you're doing this quantitative analysis of whether you're affecting student attitudes towards math, what data can you look towards? Well, I could take their grades 3 EQAO attitudinal survey, and the one that they're going to finish at, they do it in June, the results are available next fall, and I could compare and see if there's a big change over time. I'm always wary of, within my own sphere, how do I use that quantitative data? Because, you need big volumes of it to really show a trend, right? Yeah. I have to be doing a longitudinal survey to see if I'm really making a difference with students teaching this way over time. I can show my students are learning, but can I show my students with my class are learning more than if they were in somebody else's class?
Oh, okay, now supposing we say, well, actually, that's a very difficult to offer any kind of proof.
Nobody can do that.
Right,
Nobody.
so
Yeah.
if we focus on that question about, right, if Jackie and myself were asked the question, can you give us some evidence that you've influenced the learning of your students? I think we can actually demonstrate, almost beyond reasonable doubt, in working with the master students, working with doctoral, over time, we can show our influence and we can explain it. Now, one of the pleasures, if you like, of working with you both in the focus of with the pupils, is this question about whether there's anything in the paper that we can actually highlight as showing what we're meaning by this, as Liz, you've talked about that, the learning is becoming more meaningful, or something is happening with student learning that you're feeling, well, I think I can explain, are you with me, my influence in this learning. No, I don't know yet, because, as I say, I'm waiting, and I'll go through the paper very carefully, for these 3 or 4 hours on Friday morning. But I'm just not sure if you can actually...
And I think, okay, so in my students coming up with these questions, I can point to, again and again, showing that video or talking about it to people, and their reaction being, like my husband last night watched the video and said, I don't believe, watching that, I can't believe those students came up with those questions, right? And I said, okay, let me talk you through what's in the rest of the paper showing how I got there. And he said, oh, okay, so now I can see, because if it's a standalone video, you're going to think I just gave those questions to the kids, and they, he wasn't saying he didn't believe me, of course, because, trust me, but it was just seeing the kind of questions that those young kids were asking and how self-aware they were within those questions. And I can point to some other people that I've talked to, like Wendy Lowers, and, and their reaction to the questions, and that's showing people are surprised at, something that's unusual.
Okay, now, because I haven't gone through the paper carefully, I don't know whether, at the moment, that evidence, for example, in relation to the quality of the pupil questioning, which is in relation to a culture of inquiry, it feels to me to be very significant indeed. But again...
It's there, Jack.
Oh,
it's there. And
okay.
it's in Liz's kids, too.
Right.
It's there.
Okay, now, again, can I just push this just a little, just to ask... okay, if I say it is there, now, have you explained that influence? So, if we look at the video and we look at what the students are saying and the questions, which is really vital for good education, if you can show that these good quality questions are emerging with the students. Now, that's one thing, to be able to demonstrate that this is happening. Okay, so we can describe with evidence that this is happening. Now, can we go a little further than that? And have you gone, this is my question, to explaining that something that you are creating within the classrooms with the students in terms of your relationship and your beliefs and values is actually helping them to form these good quality questions? Because educationally, this feels to me to be highly significant, but I'm not sure yet. And again, this could be me, I haven't read the paper carefully enough to see that that is there.
Well, I think that's what I tried to do.
Okay, that's great.
By explaining those principles and by saying, by trusting students, I do this.
Okay, well,
I think it's there. It's a fine question though, Jack, and we probably need to go back and read through with that question in our brain.
Oh,
okay. Can you just restate the question because I got lost in there?
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's take you, Cathy, with the points you were making earlier, which excite me because it's something I've always believed, that if you can stimulate your students to ask good quality questions, educationally, that's one of the most important things you can do. Mm-hmm. So you're showing some video where your husband and others, and I've been like this myself, where sometimes people don't believe that the students can ask these kind of questions. They don't believe that the educational context can actually get the students. So, first of all, I think your data with the videos is showing that the students themselves are asking these kind of questions. That's right. The first stage to demonstrate that. Then, to go one stage further, to say, I'm also offering an explanation of my educational influence in contributing to something about the context or the student that is actually helping them to form these questions.
Yep. Okay, so I think, for example, I took my husband through and said, okay, this is what happened through here. And then he said, okay, I can understand how you got there. I think I've tried to make the process of how I got there very clear, and the fact that I didn't really know that that's where I was going to end up.
Okay. Yes.
But it ended up being that. So then I'm going to, putting the question back to you. When you read it, do you see?
Yeah. This is what I will focus on, as I say, on Friday, and I'll, any edits that I do, it will be with that in mind, and also you, Liz, where that explanatory framing, the sense of, okay, can we explain Liz's educational influence in relation to some of the, if you like, meaningful learning that the students are actually enjoying, then that is what I'll actually look for. Okay, so that would be my focus.
And I think a next step is to, like Jackie, you said, the validation process is something you said we'll do, and I think it's really important. And I've kind of got a few people lined up to already to read it and look at the videos. And, my question to them is sort of, are they seeing that the questions the kids are coming up with are of significance and unusual, or, something worthy of figuring out how to replicate? Okay. Because, we certainly do, but, and my feeling is, yes, they're going to see that too.
Okay. Now,
so have of my students who need to see these videos and get their reaction too.
Okay, so could I just focus? Are you okay with this? If I just do this just for a minute, in terms of the language used and the purposes for the paper, Okay, now this is the language that is actually in point 1 under purposes, where it says, this paper intends to demonstrate the capacities of teachers and students in a variety of settings to create a culture of inquiry that transforms social formations within their classrooms, their schools and their school systems. Then it's this next sentence. The next sentence, I'm not sure, we've got a bell ringing, but it's all right. It's this next sentence. This transformative change is accredited and validated in that it is evident over considerable time. Now, on Friday, as I say, I will look very carefully to see if that claim is justified, because it's a very exciting one, it's highly original, and it just feels to me that, if you like, that language is really important. So that's why I was just stressing the importance of checking that your explanatory framings, for your influences with the students will enable me to see, if you like, the validity of what it is you're claiming. Okay, so that's just what I wanted to highlight. It feels to me to be very, very significant indeed, that. Okay.
I think you need to read the next sentence for yourself, Jack.
Why do I need to do that? Go on.
Because that's where you answer this question.
Yes, it is. But that is the point, that each individual then is creating their own living educational theory. Okay, but that's why I was just stressing the importance of your explanations of your educational influence. That felt to me to be highly significant. And I haven't quite got Liz's claim in my mind yet. Cathy, I've got yours with the formation of the good quality questions. Yeah?
Yep.
So,
and actually, I've got 2 claims in there. Then one is exactly, I maybe need to reword it to say influence, but my first claim is that the process of the Jackie model to me, basically, and of me exposing myself as a learner and asking them to be critical of my teaching was the entryway to getting them to create those questions.
Yeah.
So,
And again, it's that nature of that relationship and the mutuality and the reciprocity, which in the paper, as I say, I'll really look very carefully to see, is it bringing these things out clearly enough? That's really good.
Right.
And Liz, could I just ask that question of you then, Liz? Because I'm very clear now with Cathy, in terms of what it is educationally that Cathy is focusing on in terms of that sense of more meaningful learning. Now, I think you've already done it, Liz, but could you just say a little bit about that feeling of,
Yeah, so I believe that, first of all, having generated my own, and we've sort of come up with a new term here, I think, in this paper, but maybe not, having generated my own living theory action research, right, which then was my living theory, enabled me to replicate that process in the classroom with more authenticity than I ever would have if I had just read about it, studied it, been tested on it. And how that transpired in the classroom was that I started trying to live more according to my values, and helping students to identify their own values. And the way that I feel that happened was by loving them into learning, like I was loved into learning, and by allowing them to take responsibility for their learning.
Great. Now, you see, that is very clear to me, and how it connects, if you like, with you both, the relationship with Jackie. So I look, Liz, then at that sense of you bringing these values, both into your classroom with the students, but also then encouraging them to become more aware of their own values.
That's correct.
Okay. So that is what on Friday, as I say, with Cathy, I'm very clear. I think about that vital nature of forming good quality questions. That, seems to me to be really significant. And then the other is to do with the values. The individuals becoming more aware of their values. And
And in some cases, it's just that they became aware that they weren't aware.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Yeah,
because it's a short course. And
oh, yeah.
blah, 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 blah. But in some of the student questions, no one's ever asked me this question before, they said. No one's, you know. So to me, that's significant.
Yes.
I mean, how can you graduate from high school and claim to have all this knowledge but not have any idea who you are? How do you move forward into choosing where to spend $60,000 to $80,000 on post-secondary education without knowing what's important to you and you know?
Well, actually, Liz, you can. You see, I think I ended up with my first degree, which was a science degree, without really asking those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that was at the age of 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but not authentically, though, Jack.
No, I think you are raising with those students really important, that sense of ontological questions. Now, I think that I got to the end of a university degree course without actually asking those kind of questions. That's what I was meaning, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same
And
thing
so is that
occurs.
okay?
Pardon?
Sorry, Jackie.
Go ahead.
Is it like somebody might say, well, so what's wrong with that?
Oh, okay, well, what I did then for myself was to say, look, actually, it was that recognition, and where you're saying your students becoming aware, I only became aware at the age of 21 or 22, that actually I had not had an education. I had been schooled. And then, at the age of 22, I started to ask those kind of questions. Now, where you ask, is that okay? The answer is no, it's certainly not okay. You know, for me, it should have been going on much earlier, much, much earlier than that. But I've just noticed, you know, that some people actually don't ask those questions in those 20s, 30s, 40s, you know. So I think you're raising, Liz, the fundamental educational, again, questions, which is what Cathy's focusing on, but with the sense of the values, the ontological values, you know, who one feels oneself to be. And this is the thing about the human flourishing, which Jackie, I think, with that sense of culture of inquiry, is making this such an exciting process, you know, in the conversations we're having. So, no, it's not all right to get to 21, 22 without doing what you're doing now with your students. Right. Yeah, great.
So maybe we need to go back early in the paper and define what we mean by learning.
Yeah. Well, if you let me, as I say, whatever you do before Friday morning, I will work with that. But I agree with you, Liz. You know, it would be great to get a framing for the paper which highlights what we're now talking about, so people understand the significance of what we're offering. You know.
There's another little piece here that takes it, I think, one more step, and that is, in my observation, experience, and so on, that once people, and I mean, it doesn't matter really how old you are, you know, once you go through this process, I don't think that's, you know, I think that's a value judgment I'm not prepared to make. But when I watch teachers go through that process of saying, you know, what are my values, and, you know, to what degree do I live according to them, and why don't I, that whole process, then when they come out the other side with kind of understanding who they are, they have a self-confidence that changes their approach to the world. They then take risks in their schools and their classrooms, and in some of them in other institutions, that they never would have taken before. And they articulate that. So that's, for me, that's a very significant part of the process. I mean, would I have taught these master's classes the way I did if I'd not been through that process? No, I don't believe I would have. Because I had a confidence then of who I was and what I stood for, and a knowledge of how fallible really I am in so many ways, but enough of a strong foundation where I'm not afraid to say that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you see that modeled, from a teacher or whatever, it changes the way you see the world even. Mm-hmm. And the kids are the same way when they watch Liz saying on a video, I have this vulnerability. And then they think, well, I have vulnerabilities too, I need to talk about them. Or the kids see Cathy and saying, I want you to help me do a better job in teaching you. And that really triggers a lot of thinking in their heads. Okay, then what do I need to know so that I learn better? Wow.
Yeah, but there's something, Jackie, I think, I don't know if you agree, but something very significant happened in the course of the creation of your thesis, your doctoral, the originality of it. I don't know if you recall, but all of your material was, if you like, chaotic. And there was something about the bringing that together.
Can you define that a little more? My whole thesis was chaotic.
No, not the material. I don't know if you remember, but yes, it was you had box after box of material which wasn't organised, and there was something about that creative process where it actually started to form. And as the thesis emerged, when you talk about this confidence, about almost knowing oneself and that originality about the knowledge you were creating, there feels to me to be so, and I imagine both of you went through with the masters to have done those dissertations that you did. Again, something, and I know it did with me, with my doctorate, something very, very important about knowing oneself and getting that confidence about what it was that one believed in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so again, I think that seems really important, and we've all experienced that. The chaotic, then the gradual, bringing together into coherence, that sense we understand what it is that we've been doing. Okay.
Okay, I think there's one more point here. When Cathy said, how can I prove this quantitatively?
Yeah.
I'm not using the word quantitative. I'm saying that during the course of time that I spend with students, I can see them very obviously growing in their recognition of their embodied knowledge, and see them working from, I would say, a lack of confidence to that confidence. I see it happen. And when they speak, originally it's very tentative. I'm not sure about this, but, and I don't know if I can deal with that. And then, they get larger than life. You say, well, this is what I know because I did this and this and this, and here's the evidence, and here are the other voices. And it's just, I think it's transformation. It was for me personally. I think it's transformation for them. And I mean, Cathy and Liz can speak to that. I mean, I can go around that circle in that room and to a person say, I would say with one exception, when somebody didn't finish and was sick. But I mean, that whole group, they just shone.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing for my class, right?
It's exactly the same thing.
But can you just you see, how do we relate what you just said, Jackie, to this point in the purposes, where it says, and the focus is on transformation. So what you've said there is transformative of the individual learner. Now we've got here a culture of inquiry that transforms, it's all right, that's here, so that's mine, that transforms social formations. Are you with me? I'll need to, again, work on this, because I think what you're saying is highly significant in terms of that relationship between the individuals and the transformations, and the notion of the culture of inquiry, which contains that sense of social transformation. Are you okay?
One of my students said that as a result of having answered the question, who am I and how do I know and so what and now what, that they came to trust one another more. Okay. And that
they felt that this would be never ending, and that was in the students' words, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's a transformation of a social formation.
Yes, it is. It really
and
is.
Then that contributes to the ripple effect, because now one of those students has gone on and shared that in her university class setting. She took a big risk. She exposed her vulnerability in the first month of the class, and has affected those people and that social formation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we look at, okay, I had 31 students that have gone off and, affected other, because I don't know, you'd almost have to be either psychotic or some, I'm serious, or brain dead not to be affected by that.
Yeah, I can't quite see that statement.
I know.
I don't think we can use that.
This is it. The scholarly language seems to have...
The scholarly language doesn't cut it sometimes.
Yes. So we tell the audience at AERA, yes, you have got to be brain dead or not to see this, yes.
If you live it.
Yes.
If you live it. I mean, we did have actually... in one social formation I was involved in, there was one person who resisted it.
Okay. Yeah.
That I'm aware of, anyway. And so, but I would say that person didn't live it. That and that was okay. They weren't ready.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for whatever reason, and that's not my call to make, right?
Yeah.
But anybody else who gives it a go, we were talking about it today in class, and I used the analogy of, you go out shopping with someone and someone says, oh, that's a cute shirt. That would look great on you. And I would look at it and say, oh, I would never wear something like that. Oh, yes, Liz, that would look great on you. Try it on. Trust me. So I go into the dressing room. I try on this shirt. Hey, yeah, this is really comfortable and I like it. Right? So if you go into a community of inquiry where you feel loved into learning and somebody says to you, hey, try this on, and you try it on for real, then I think you can't not be influenced.
Okay. I wonder whether I could bring some evidence in relation to the passion that Jackie had got out. All those booklets, Passion in Professional Practice, because I think those contain the evidence of that sense of a social transformation with individuals who are actually trusting each other. That feels to me very significant.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Again, I think early on in the paper, perhaps, making these points as clearly as I can, perhaps on Friday. Yeah, no, I've got so much to work on now. Yes.
Well, you did this to us, Jack.
Yes, this is retaliation. Retaliation.
That's your influence, Jack.
Yes, thank you. Yes. And yours on me. Yes, no. Well, that's me on Friday then. Good. Can I ask, are we all right now for this evening or not? Because, yes. Is that it? Are you okay?
Define all right.
Yes. Well, I leave with pleasure, I mean, on that note, I can leave with delight, yes, thinking what I've got to do on Friday. But it's fascinating, yes.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
Well, I feel better about the paper just having had this discussion, to be honest.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I think we've narrowed the focus a bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this point about student learning, whatever language we use, I mean, if we aren't making a difference to improve things in our social transformations, then I would feel that I hadn't accomplished much. That's very important to me, to feel like I have made a positive difference in people's lives.
And you just said that, though, Jackie, and you didn't use the word student learning. You just said, as long as I'm making a difference, a positive influence.
But we are in schools. I mean, we are teachers and students, right? So isn't it about, as teachers, that we make their lives better, that we help them learn better?
Yeah, but you've also got, Jackie, this additional understanding about this idea of a culture of inquiry. So this is vital, I think. So yes, you want to make a difference to the students' lives, but your insight, which is so important, is that what we've also got to recognise is how vital this sense of a culture of inquiry is. So it's trying to hold both of those together. Trying to make a difference as each one of us is with any student we are with. But then I think the originality of this paper, again, is looking at what you've done for me is actually bring me into a network of relationships, which is enabling me to get a better understanding about this idea of a culture of inquiry and also a social transformation. So hopefully I can...
But for me, the culture of inquiry is the environment, the way we do things around here, to use Stenhouse's description, that enables this kind of experience for teachers and learners.
But I might argue that the way we do things around here, and now if we're talking about we, and doing things around here the way we do them now, is not what some people would agree is student learning.
I'm not following.
So, why are you wasting all that time talking about how they're learning? You have this much curriculum to cover. That's
right.
Well,
you mean, Liz?
Exactly, that's the point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but, we're almost arguing that the opposite, right? The way we do things around here is not contributing to student learning, traditionally speaking. But when we bring in a culture of inquiry, the way we have through our having lived it ourselves and experienced it, then we can create student learning. Otherwise,
it's transforming social formation.
Yeah.
That is transforming the social formation. That doesn't mean that you have that existing in every corner of the school or the school system. It means that we're building this where we can in our little piece of the world.
Are we okay?
I think so.
Yes. Yes, I must depart. It's now, what time is it? Yes, it's now 10 to 9 in the evening here.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But our clocks go, I think, either forward or back. I'll have to check on Sunday night. So, I'll make sure that I don't miss you by an hour.
It goes forward in the spring, Jack, so you'll be back to 6 hours.
6 hours, right.
5 hours.
Okay.
You'll go back to 5 hours.
5 hours, okay. I've got that.
So Friday is still forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Spring forward, that's
fall
it.
backward.
Yeah, fall backwards, that's it. Yes, we were trying to remember that as we were driving back. Yes, this afternoon. Spring forward, fall back. That's great.
And that's what we're doing, springing forward.
Yes. Yeah. But I'll see you Friday, yeah?
Friday morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 1:30 for me.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.